Welcome to Ever Beyond, on Wolf Spirit Radio, No Borders Radio, and everbeyond.info. Be prepared to leave your belief systems behind as we go beyond teachers, beyond gurus, beyond duality, ever beyond, 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 beyond. Hello and welcome back. That was some Orient House. I don't know the name of the track because, as far as I'm concerned, somebody had the CD. She played it at a party one night, and I said, "Can I have a copy of that?" And it just came out as track 1, track 2. So I don't know who it was, but I think it's a fantastic track. I love it. It's that kind of cross between Western and Eastern and all that kind of great stuff. That really is kind of, we need to bring more of the unity factor rather than the disunity to that particular zone at the moment. Anyway, having said that, having discussed that far-ranging and very interesting conversation with Dr. Muggsy, we now are joined by Dr. Gallanti. And I'm not kidding either. She's so clever. She's more clever than you're, you know, like you put about 9 people together, and she's more clever than that. And not only that, she's got a great sense of humour. She's funny, and she talks London. So my second guest tonight on my dual goddess Ever Beyond special is Katie Gallanti. Hi, Katie. Welcome back.
JayPee, how are you doing, sweetie?
I'm all right. It's quite a day. So tonight it's a goddess moment. I was first of all playing earlier on this evening Robert Morningsky with Rebecca Jernigan. It's talking about the Ladies of Fire, the idea that we're all, you know, this is a feminine energy, you know, the whole earth thing is feminine. We are all feminine, and there are some modified feminines which we call male, but we're all feminine, and that it's a whole matriarchy business going on, and that's part of the whole change that's going and happening now, and that's, you know, this is the empowerment of women and all of these wonderful things that are going on.
Yeah, and actually I have you know, if you notice, a lot of the people that are bringing in the spiritual element at this time are female, right? It seems that a lot of the males gravitate more towards the kind of more info warrior type of thing, right? And the females are the ones that carry more of the psychic thing. Now, it's not universal across the board, but it seems to be kind of like a rule of thumb. And I've actually had some thoughts about that, you know, because ultimately at the soul level, we're not male, we're not female, right? We're just souls coming into bodies, but there must have been a reason for which some souls chose a female body and some souls chose a male body, right? And I think that part of it has to do with the genetic modification that I believe happened to the human body a very long time ago, probably around Atlantis, but probably even before that, right? Where I think they kind of downsized the human body because we were all male, female, 12th dimensional, you know, wired to be 12th dimensional, wired to have all of this DNA that was active. And then they kind of dumbed it down, right, to two strands that were functional, and I believe that in that process they kind of switched off as much as they could from both of the genders, but that they had to leave certain things open in the female because if you're going to procreate, you have to have an emotional connection to the child, because children that don't have an emotional connection or a psychic connection with the mother literally die. I mean, there was stories years ago about the Romanian babies that weren't hugged or held, do you know what I mean? And they developed all sorts of problems, and a lot of them even died from isolation, right? From emotional isolation. So I think that that is why there's a lot of souls that have decided to come into a female body that want to do more, like that want to embody more of the spiritual type work, because somehow those channels are already a little bit more open, right? And I'm not saying that they're better or worse, but I think that we got genetically modified in a slightly different way that allows for that kind of access. And I had that thought several times, and it feels accurate to me, but, I'm me, so it's my thought. It feels accurate to me. So I don't know if it's true or not. It's just the theory, okay?
Well, you are, I mean, let's not say, you're not just a dizzy blonde or a dizzy redhead. You're a physicist, you understand the scientific process.
I do.
When you have a feeling, there are ways that you actually kind of check outside to check that you're perceiving in the correct way, don't you?
Yes. It seems to me, even as a healer, when I work with people, that very often the females have more of the third eye stuff going on. They also have more damage in their second chakra and in their third chakra. So I'm not saying that the females are better than the males. I'm just saying that energetically they're structured slightly differently, so that the certain channels are more open, others are more closed. And I think traditionally on this planet, at least during the last round, right, because there's been several cycles of humanity on this planet, of which we in recorded history, we talked about it many times, we only have awareness and knowledge of the last one, right, of the current one that we're in. But there's been other ones before. I think Michael Tellinger is one of the people that has kind of looked into some of the older, the evidence of the older cycles, right? But so it seems to me that, that the females have been set up for one, genetically modified for one purpose, and the males have been genetically modified for different purposes, and mostly the males were supposed to work, they're supposed to, go to war, they're supposed to, do the power thing and so on. So that is what has been more empowered for the males, and for the females it's been more, the reproductive thing and so on that requires other channels to stay open. So, but definitely at the moment we are actually going into integration, and going into integration means that the female has to come back, because the female has been very repressed over the ages, right? Now we're getting to the point that the males are feeling repressed. Like I'm hearing a lot from men that actually feel that they are repressed also. And I think it's because the feminists have bashed them up a little bit too much, do you know what I mean? And our friends, the Rockefellers, gave them, it made the feminists and the feminist mindset into a male-bashing mindset that then...
Oh, Katie Gallanti, thank you so much. Can you just say that very, very slowly for people one more time? And just let's get this, put the bottom line underneath it and move on. Thank you, please.
Right. Well, the feminist movement was actually sponsored by the Rockefellers, right? And if you listen to the interview of... what was the first name of that guy, Russo, the filmmaker?
Aaron Russo?
Russo, yeah, Aaron Russo. So, and he was best buddies with one of these Rockefellers, right? And if we are to assume that what he said was true, which I believe probably was, because he died very soon after saying it, okay, of cancer, and we know that the powers that be can actually provoke cancer in people now, right? But anyway, Aaron Russo came out and basically released like a 2-3 hour interview in which he talked about a lot of the things that he learned through his friendship with one of the Rockefellers, right? They actually became buddies, and they exchanged, ideas, conversation, and so on for a short while. And he then came out, and I think he was in an interview with Alex Jones, kind of spilled the beans about everything that he had learnt. And one of the things that he learnt was the fact that the feminism was sponsored by the Rockefellers. And I'm going to specify in a minute what I mean by feminism. But it was sponsored by the Rockefellers, and that the idea behind it was to create a division between the males and the females so that there would be a split in the family. And also, if you think about it, the male-female is actually the seed pod of love. If you have a male-female that actually really love each other, that are completely supportive of each other, that empower each other, then you have really healthy offspring, right, that are also going to do the same. Within a couple of generations, you have a very empowered humanity, okay? So that is based in love, that is based in integrity, that doesn't have trauma, right, and all of these kinds of things. And instead, if you fragment that, right, and there's several sources that talk about the deliberate fragmentation of the male-female bond and of the family, right? If you fragment that, then you have traumatized children, and you also have no stability. I mean, I've actually experienced this in my own life, that now it's hard to create stability in relationships. Like, people have relationships for a number of years, and then they divorce, or they break up or whatever, and then they start all over again. Now, while there is a karmic clearing aspect to all of that actually does serve a purpose, right? Because we are in this wrap-up ascension time, so there's the need to encounter a lot of people to clear up karma. On another level, it's a very disruptive process because you don't get to create stability. You have to constantly, do you know what I mean? You have to constantly recreate something, and so the foundation could be stronger if there was a relationship that is actually really strong and supportive. That creates a really strong foundation from which you can then go out as a team and do all sorts of things, right? So the powers that be have put a lot of energy into splitting that, also separating children from their parents, and splintering the extended family, making life very expensive for everybody so that you can no longer look after your own. And most people send their elders to nursing homes. Do you know what I mean? They put stuff in the food so that the elders get Alzheimer's, so they can't remember anything that they learned, right? So they can't pass it down to anybody, right? So, and all of this fragmentation is there to basically create a very weak society that is very traumatized and very easy to exploit. And also, one of the other reasons for which they created feminism was because they wanted both the male and the female to go to work, so that there could be double taxation instead of single taxation, right? And they then structured the work so that it was not a choice for the male and the female for one of them to stay home. So both have to work. And even with both parents working, still many families are struggling, right? And so it just creates more of this survival first chakra kind of disruption, right? So yeah, and so the by feminism, I'm not saying that there was not a need for women to be empowered, and because the society that came before was very patriarchal and not necessarily in a good way, right? And the women have very few rights. So I'm not saying that what was going on before was good. I'm just saying that when it was time, it's the usual hijacking of consciousness and hijacking of movements, right? When it was time for the women and the feminine energy and the divine feminine and the goddess to come out of the box to play, here you have the Rockefellers that bring in this very militant kind of feminism that is anti-male, male bashing, blah, blah, blah. And, the male bashing is not so great for the males, but it's not so great for the females either, because in a climate of male bashing, there is no love. And so the women are actually being conditioned to almost like see the males in a very negative light. And by doing that, without realizing it, they are also creating rifts so that partnership is actually harder to have, right? And on top of that, another thing that happened kind of in the 60s is that there was like the sexual liberation, do you know what I mean, all of that kind of stuff. And so, and there was another blow in some ways to solid relationship, because in theory the whole sexual liberation was about women being able to experiment sexually and so on. But actually, one of the results of that is that there's much less commitment in relationships, because if you read some of the Mars Venus type stuff, men and women and how they bond, men need to bond emotionally. They don't bond through physicality. They bond through time spent with somebody that they care about, and over a period of time they bond emotionally, but it takes a longer time for the male to do that. And women instead bond often through sexuality. They bond very quickly, even physically. There's the whole oxytocin thing, do you know what I mean? And energetically, there's the courting that happens at the sexual level. And women are almost like biologically programmed to bond through the sexual experience. So you have sexual experiences that happen way too soon in the relationship, like immediately or within a couple of days, do you know what I mean, from meeting somebody or whatever, in a lot of cases, especially the younger generations. And then, so then you have males that don't bond with women that bond prematurely, right? Which creates all sorts of issues. It creates commitment issues for a start. It creates dependency issues for the women, and generally speaking, it makes relationships start on a very in a very easy way, but in a way that does not actually support later stages of the relationship. So anyway, so all of these things, I believe, were brought in deliberately to disrupt the male-female union. And the purpose behind it was because I think the male-female union, when it's done properly, and it's done from a place of love and a place of empowerment and responsibility, is actually a very strong unit. And it's a strong unit where the male can be supported by the female and the female can be supported by the male. But then also it's a powerful unit in terms of children coming into the world with a much stronger support system and less trauma and so on, right?
Yeah, so that's true. On the other hand, the fact that humanity, the spirit of humanity continues to manifest its health, through that process, we've now come to the point of creating what are called intentional communities, which are like families of people who like each other.
Yes.
Because, all the great things about the family, but there are some things about families that suck. And what I think what we're trying to do is to create a way of humans to live together that may not have been born in the same race. We're all mangled up, there's refugees, all sorts of, but everybody needs integration. Somehow we need to be able to gather according to our feather, like birds of a feather gather together. That's so true. I'm watching my chickens. It's great fun. Anyway, I'm now learning what henpecked means. My rooster is being henpecked by my previously bullied girls. Oh dear. There's a microcosm going on here. Yeah, it's the peckled hen's revenged.
Excellent. Yeah, and the solutions. What you're talking about is it's like, okay, so where do we go from here? And these are some of the solutions that are coming out, right? And I think that we've talked before about the fact that the dark side is always catalyst. At least if you use it appropriately, the dark side is catalyst. So and by that I mean that in the grand cosmic design, right, the dark side is almost like an obstacle. It's like the sand in the oyster, right, that then creates the pearl. It's like it's the obstacle that then you're faced with, and if you understand, that triggers you into finding new ways, new solutions, and also triggers you into going to the next level of consciousness. Because if there were not a dark side that gives you grief, you would also not necessarily invest all of the time and energy into overcoming that and into finding a way to go beyond that, right? And so even all of this situation that we are in right now, in which we have all of these, the powers that be and all the rest of it, I mean, if there were no powers that be, most of us would just be, doing our own lives without really thinking about the global collective picture that much, right? But because there is this threat of the powers that be, then all of us on the planet, we're all kind of organizing and thinking and brainstorming and trying to go to the next level, right? So that's the positive side of the powers that be. There's not that many of them, but that's one of them. Right? And, and even this whole male-female thing, it's not that what was there before was fantastic either. And through this particular, challenge and so on, we will be stimulated into finding new things. It's almost like the schooling that is all programmed has created homeschooling and people getting together to educate outside of the paradigm altogether, right? So all of these crises also give an opportunity to create something new, and that is actually the best use of the crises. Right.
Yeah, that's the use of the 0 point, because the crisis is when you discover that, that's not what I thought it was. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of crises, just changing the subject slightly, we don't have to go into massive detail about this, but I just, because you and I talked at around lunchtime, 1:00, and people may know this or not, but I've just come back from being away for a month, and yesterday I was traveling all day, and I didn't know I was going to be on the radio, so I was just thinking through, okay, so what's been going on in this month in which I've been kind of off the, radar kind of thing, right? And especially right now, there's quite a lot going on. There's this whole Ukraine thing that has been boiling for a while, right? And now we have the Malaysian flight number 17 that has crashed, apparently taken down by a missile that the USA blames the Russians for. Okay, so the USA, and actually Obama came out today saying that USA intelligence is pretty much certain that it was the Russians supported rebels that kind of took down this plane, right? And then we also have the whole situation in Gaza with the Israel-Gaza and what's going on over there. Then we have the children that are coming from Central America that are crossing the border or trying to cross the border and then getting detained. And I don't know if you heard about that, but there's like 60,000 of these children. It's not like a few children, right? It's like a grand migration of children. And apparently, according to some kind of like more conspiracy type sources, these children were actually kind of encouraged to come, and they were told that Obama was going to support them, and they were giving them things like tennis shoes with Obama pictures and "Yes, we can" written all over them, right? So there's definitely some kind of agenda going on there. Not sure exactly that I'm exactly clear about what the agenda is, but whenever you bring in a lot of extraneous energy into a situation, you always create some kind of destabilization, right? So I would put this in terms of another wave of destabilization of the USA, which I really truly believe having looked at some of the astrology especially, because Pluto is opposite the USA sun right now, which is the birth sun of the USA. And also we are coming up against a Saturn-Neptune square, right, which is coming at the beginning of next year. And Saturn-Neptune is interesting because it seems to actually coincide with a lot of endings of regimes and endings of because Neptune is all about illusion, it's about vision, but it's also about
belief systems.
Yeah, belief systems, but it's also about spiritual gurus. It's like the glamours. It's almost like the glamours of Alice Bailey, right? So it can be a lot of different things. And when Saturn comes in, Saturn is like, well, sorry, it was nice, your little idea, but we have to flush it down the toilet now. Right? Or you're going to be confronted with the reality of the limitations of your vision, right? And so, for example, the Saturn-Neptune were in aspect when the Berlin Wall came down, and when at the end of the USSR, right, at the beginning of the end of the USSR, which actually happened very fast from a outer world perspective. It did. And believe it or not, I was actually there when it happened. I was in Russia in 1990 as a physics student in exchange with Moscow University. So now in hindsight, I can see why I was there, because I needed to see this. I needed to see the end of the USSR, right? And at the time, I didn't know what had hit me because I was there for like 3 weeks and there was no food. So I think I lost something like 25 pounds in 3 weeks. I could have been on an episode of Survivor. We probably ate about 5 times in 3 weeks, right?
Oh my God.
There was no food. There was just no food. You couldn't buy it anywhere. There was no food in the shops, right? And I also believe that I witnessed the beginning of the Russian mafia, in the sense that wherever we had to go to get food, because we had money, we had to interact with these really shady characters, right, that were kind of emerging almost as black market figures, because the whole structure of all of this world was crumbling, right? So it was a very interesting experience. All that we could find easily was vodka, so we drank a ton of it, but it was really greasy vodka that tasted like oil.
It sounds like it wasn't. It was more like some sort of petroleum distillate.
That's right.
Gross. Well, I mean, you survived it, but at what cost? You know, you could have had 8 PhDs instead of 7.
That's right.
My God, she's brain damaged. Yeah. Oh, poor love.
We did a lot of singing. I will never forget washing my hair because there was no hot water, right? And this is Russia. It's cold in Russia. So if you have no hot water, your water is really cold. So I had long hair even at the time, so I had to wash my hair with this metal bucket and filled it in with water in the student house, and the water was just icy. So I literally could just dip my head into the water, take it out, put the shampoo on, dip it into the water again, and then dry it with as fast as possible without getting pneumonia, right? It was not a fun process. I think I washed my hair only twice in the 2 weeks, because you could literally feel the veins in your head freezing out. So anyway, but it was interesting just as a process to watch all of that, because it was literally like stepping into a world that was about to fall apart and decay. And that was during a Saturn-Neptune transit at the time, but I can't remember in what signs, but it was a Saturn-Neptune thing going on right there. So, people have been, my sense is that the USA has been programmed for a fall for quite some time. And for a fall doesn't mean that the USA is going to stop existing, but it may stop existing in the exact form that that is around right now. It may be due for like a restructuring of some kind, right? So I think it's kind of interesting that there's this, I believe, kind of manufactured influx of all of these new energies are putting even more pressure on the system at this particular time, and who knows whatever else agenda is around that, okay? And all of these things that are happening right now on the planet, all of them, to some degree, feel manufactured. Like this Malaysia thing, this Malaysia flight that just went down in Russia, right? Both sides are saying that the other people did it, okay? So the rebels are saying that the Ukraine government sent up the missile, and the USA and the Ukraine government are saying that the rebels did it, which means the Russians, because these are Russian-backed rebels, right? So why would they take... And also, apparently, there's some high strange around this event as well, because if you look at the pictures of the downed plane, there are a lot of bodies around these pictures, but the bodies are actually not mangled in with the debris. They're all kind of neatly to the side, right? And all of the debris is charred and the bodies are not. And the bodies are in rapid state of decomposition. I don't know the word.
Decomposition,
anyway,
yeah. No, and the other thing is that they're exsanguinated. There's no blood in them.
No blood, okay. I even had a friend that suggested that this may be the same plane, the 370 one that disappeared, and maybe they just plopped it back there. Right?
I wouldn't disagree with that one. It's it's just too convenient. There's far too many sevens. And I think it's all like, oh, shiny seven, shiny seven, seven, shiny, shiny seven. And it's like, don't look at Gaza, which
Absolutely.
Let's, because really that's the big problem in the world. And if we can't talk about the energy behind that, then I don't think we're doing it the right service.
I agree. And before we go on to Gaza, which is most definitely the next piece here, right? This event, right, with the Malaysia flight and everything, there's two things that kind of stand out. One of them, Robert Phoenix on Free Association Radio, he had a guest who's called Ellis something, there's a numerologist, that pointed out that July 17th that is when this happened, and it's also when the Gaza thing started really escalating, is the birthday of ISIS. Okay? So both the event that had to do with the plane and the escalation of the Gaza experience happened during the supposedly birthday of ISIS. And I went on the internet to check if this is true, and there's about 15 different sources saying July 17th is the birthday of ISIS, right? Now, that is also called, for some reason, the Night of the Cradle. I have no idea why. More internet research required to understand that. And then the other thing is that apparently on that same day, Putin was coming back from this BRICS summit, right? And BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And apparently, one of the themes of the summit was to create a BRICS bank that was a way to walk away from loans from the World Bank and from the IMF. All right?
Flipping the bird to the Fed, indeed.
That's right. Basically, worldwide. World Bank and the IMF, goodbye. And literally to the point that they were kind of redefining themselves as a anti-American and anti-World Bank group, right? So they've just gone to this thingy, in Brazil apparently, this summit was taking place. And, Russia has been talking for a while to go its own way with its own currency, etc. But at this particular point, they're literally talking about how to create a new bank that will generate loans for countries that don't want to play with the IMF and the World Bank, which we know are the sharks of the world, right? And here he goes and he's flying home. And apparently he too was supposed to fly over Ukraine roughly at the same time. And here we have who knows who sending a missile that takes down a plane and then blames it on the Russians, right? Do you know what I mean? That it's being blamed by the Americans as usual. They do all of their, and I'm not talking about Americans in terms of bad Americans. I'm talking about the elite, okay? I'm talking about the elite faction that works through the American government and who is closely tied to Israel anyway. That and basically what they are saying with is that their intelligence knows that this was caused by the Russians, right? So here you have basically a warning, I think, going to the Russians saying, okay, you want to create your own bank that goes against the grander banks of the world, right? And the energies and people that are behind that. Be very careful because we can take down your plane anytime, right? And in fact, they've done it before. Do you remember at some point they took down the plane of some Polish political person some years ago who was trying to do something that was kind of against the rules and took his plane down and all his cabinet within a very short period of time, right? So I think part of this is, as usual, they do events that serve many purposes at once. I think they're trying to trigger some kind of World War III, or at least there's one faction of the elite that are trying to do that. There's always been a faction of the elite that has wanted World War III. I'm not sure who exactly is in charge at the moment, but certainly there's a lot of fire at the moment going into the direction of world destabilization, right? And then, yeah, absolutely. Then there is, at the same time at which this is happening, the whole Israel and Gaza thing starts escalating, which was, I believe, also provoked by a false flag, right? Because basically, what was it? The beginning of, I mean, it's been going on forever, but the beginning of this particular episode was the kidnapping of 3 students, right? And then by Hamas, supposedly. Although, apparently afterwards another group came out claiming that they did it, and this group was called ISIS. Did you know that?
Yep.
So we have the ISIS energy again, right? So,
and of course, if you put the letters ISIS all sort of one on top of the other, you get the dollar symbol, don't you?
Oh, really? Yes, that's true. That's true. Very good. I didn't know that, JayPee. That's good. So, yeah. And, you know, recently I actually had, because you remember I talked about ISIS before on Out of the Box show, and I actually had a lot of backlash from saying that ISIS is not necessarily a good goddess to play with, right? I had people that sent me almost like, you know, people that I don't know, anonymous people on YouTube, that basically said that I don't understand anything about the goddess and I don't understand anything about ISIS, right?
A bit of New Age hate mail, huh?
I got New Age hate mail, and actually one of them was like a pagan-y looking woman, right? And which is fine. And then I also had other people that asked me, oh, really? I shouldn't be playing with ISIS, so what other goddess am I not supposed to play with? So I just wanted to go there that I am not an expert on ISIS, but the only thing that I can see is that ISIS is one of the goddesses of the Dark Elite. They bring ISIS, they roll ISIS out consistently in all of their videos. In, you know, it's an energy that is quoted often and referenced often. If you even look at the 2012 Super Bowl, that was a whole ISIS ritual from beginning to end, right, with Madonna. I don't know if you remember that. And so, personally, I don't really want to, you know, I see this as a Dark Elite pantheon member, right? And I'm sure that energies can be accessed at many different levels depending on the level of consciousness of the person that accesses them, but it seems to me that this is an energy that is being quoted repeatedly by our friends of the dark t-shirts, right?
Right, I'm just looking down wearing a black t-shirt. Anyway.
But, you know
yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, rather than calling them the bad guys.
Yeah,
right?
the bad guys.
You know,
The intergalactic mafiosi who have been chasing through time and space, and finally we've nailed them. And we got them in a corner. I mean, basically, here they are. They're in a corner. They're not nice people, and they're in a corner. And there's a lot of exposure. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. You know what? Okay, so we think, okay, let's get rid of all the pedophiles, let's get rid of all the all this corruption, and mm-hmm. we get rid of all these people, and then we realise that there's nothing left but the corporation.
Right.
This is one of these stark feelings that I had, and the corporation is pure tyranny. Mm-hmm. And what do you do about the corporation? Because then we discover that the corporation is the Nazi global empire.
Yes.
That we've been that has been kind of building up for the last 60 years. So yep. Let's in the last 20 minutes. How do we deal with that within and without?
That's a very big question.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Sprung that one on you, didn't I? All right. So let's break it down a little to bite-sized chunks. I mean, there's been the plan of the Elders of Zion, and it seems to have been playing out, even though everybody says it's a fake. It's been playing out in our lifetimes.
I agree with you. On that. Okay. There is an energy behind the scenes. Okay. Like in some ways, how do you deal with the PTBs and the corporation and whatever you want to call it, right? Is that you sign out of the system. It's pretty much that's the only way. If you pick up something and throw them a pebble, you're like David and Goliath, right? Like you're a small little tiny dude against this big gigantic thing, okay? And although I think in the Bible David won against Goliath, I can't remember how he did it. I think he must have been very fast.
5 smooth stones.
That's right.
5 smooth stones in his slingshot. So he used an incredibly low technology. You know, yes. Maybe Goliath had a ray gun. You know, he may have had a phaser or a flash gun or some bit of technology because it's an ET and it might still be working. So to use very low tech human type things, you know, the old tricks are the best. You know, the old camouflage trap. The tripwire, they work every time. Yeah.
I think, you know, for us, it's like, we've been doing part of it for some time. That is the educate piece, right? It's like, hey, look-see over here. Look at the magician behind the curtain, right? So part of it is what we have been doing for a while. That is basically to show that the emperor has no clothes. And that there's the magician behind the curtain, and basically to expose all of the programming and the secrets, right? So that's one way. However, as we can see, that way is not by itself enough. Because if it were, we'd already have solved this problem, right? Because now the powers that be, they don't even say anything. They let us just talk on the radio, because as long as that's all that we do is talk on the radio. I mean, yeah, sure enough, every now and then somebody tries to kill me through my third eye, but I'm still here. Do you know what I mean? And so are you, and so is everybody else. So it's almost as if we are being allowed now to just expose and talk and all the rest of it, because if that is all that we do, it's not enough. Okay? And so there is an issue around, okay, so what's the next step? Because if you attack in a kind of aggressive kind of way, really they have it all figured out. They have, if you do the revolution, they have the counter-revolution, right? They have the infiltration of every movement. And if you do it with violence, they will do the anti-riot thing, and then before you know it, you'll be slammed into some kind of camp type thing, right? So that's not really a very smart way to go. But I do believe that it is possible to start building, like almost like signing out and building alternative ways of being. So, for example, the whole grow your own food, the whole create communities where you can help each other live and survive, create your own schools, create your own education systems, all of these kind of things, right? And it's basically opt out and create something different to the side. And so that's one way. However, we have challenges with that too, because look at the grow your own food thing. All of these laws have come out saying you can't grow your own food. So now it's going to be illegal to grow carrots, right? Which is kind of funny, but not really, right? So, I don't know what the solution is going to be. I think that the solution is going to come from the next generations. I was reading an article that I wrote some time ago, that is actually on my Facebook page because I reposted it. But I wrote this like 3 or 4 years ago. And I was looking at all of the different generations and their astrological signatures and kind of what their job has been, right? And our generation is the Pluto-Uranus generation in Virgo, and our job has pretty much been one of dismantling. We dismantle stuff. We look at reality and we break it apart. A lot of Pluto-Uranus people were the people that actually created a lot of the programs for computers and so on. So it's like Pluto-Uranus is an energy that is able to deconstruct at a very microscopic, fine-tuned level. So very good for the software programming, computer industry, and all of that. That is pretty much a Pluto-Uranus baby, and at least in its widespread form, right? But it's also very good at breaking down what doesn't work. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. Virgo is very critical. This doesn't work. I don't like it. I don't like it. This is wrong. Pick it apart, break it down, rebuild, right? But I think that we have been more in charge of the breakdown thing. It's like, this doesn't work. We have to do something about it. So that's our job. And then if you go further, there's several generations, but we get to the Pluto and Scorpio kids. And the Pluto and Scorpio kids, if I remember correctly, they have a very strong Neptune placement. I think there's the generation that comes in at some point that has the Neptune in Capricorn. I think it's the same ones as the Pluto and Scorpio. Anyway, those kids have a lot of power, and they also have very concrete ability to create a vision. Because Capricorn is very, very building in the world, and Neptune is the vision. And so that particular generation that I think were born in the 80s, early 90s, I think are going to be the ones that have the late 80s to mid 90s. Those are the ones that have the Neptune in Capricorn, and those I think are going to be the ones that are going to have a lot of the solutions to all of this stuff. And they are now in their mid 20s. In their late 20s, right? In 10 years from now, they will be in a position to really be coming of age with their stuff. Most generations come of age around the beginning of their 40s. It's almost like they have to go through things, and then once they come back to their first Pluto square, that is late 30s, early 40s, depending on the sign, then that generation kind of comes on age. Whatever it is that they were supposed to bring in, they start throwing it out into the world, right? So I think there is hope, but I think that the ideas and the true solutions, they haven't come yet. I don't think we have them yet all the way. We're still in this deconstruct phase, right? But I believe that we will get these ideas when we're supposed to have them, okay? Once we have kind of completed with this deconstruction thing. And astrologically, I think that this deconstruction thing is very much part of the Pluto in Capricorn phase that we're in, and we're going to be in the Pluto in Capricorn until 2024. So we have another 10 years, I think, in which we're dealing with the powers that be head on and busy in tearing down this system, which obviously at this point everybody knows doesn't work, and everybody knows that there's been massive abuse of power around it, right? And it's becoming more and more obvious. But the process is not complete yet. We're only halfway through Pluto and Capricorn. So we still have some time to, go through this process. Does that make any sense at all? I'm thinking in astrological terms.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it's like, how long is this going to thing last for? So you're basically saying that we're doomed to be ground to a fine powder, and well, I mean, when you're talking about being able to deconstruct something, I really understand that, because, what I have to do in my work, the programming is you have to model something very finely and carefully, and you start off with a very rough, and you kind of hone it down and shape it and form it until it takes the perfect form. In a algorithm. That's what they call an algorithm. When you got something that will create a model. So you have to understand things, and then once you've deconstructed it, you see that, as we're saying, these are all mental constructs, and this is what the Matrix is all about, and all of these things. So the question is, in the last 10 minutes or so, what are the best ways that you've found work for you in getting to that core you self that is here to express?
In the context of the powers that be thing, or just
in your own world, but it's always in your own world, and how you've managed to overcome what apparently other people are trapped by, things that they think the powers that be are out to get them with. Wow, sorry.
That's a good question, and I've thought about it before, and I think that there's several things here. First of all, I really do believe that some of us come here from other dimensional realities, right? So we choose a body, but we're actually not used to being here that often. So that helps, because in your soul memory somewhere, there's other realities that are not as screwed up as this one, right? And so there's a compare and contrast, I think, that goes on without even being conscious of it, okay? So I don't think that I was ever in the Matrix to begin with, right from the get-go. And as a child, and I'm going to be careful about how I say this, because I still have a lot of loyalty to my family, right? Even if they were challenging for me at some level, right? But, I was born into a set of circumstances that was very, very complicated. And as such, I didn't really belong to my family, right? And then it got even more complicated. And there were, trauma issues of various kinds. And one of the things that used to get me in trouble in that setting was that I could see things extremely clearly, even when I was like 5. Okay. And so I was almost like the kid that could see through the dysfunction, right? And as a result of that, I kind of became more of the object of that dysfunction, because in any kind of dysfunctional system, the dysfunctional system always tries to kind of squish the person that can see. Do you know what I mean? Because that threatens the survival of the dysfunctional system. So it's kind of like that in my early setup also, right? So I never really truly belonged. And also, when I was 9 years old, nothing is by coincidence, this was obviously supposed to happen, but I ended up, my teacher, I was in primary school, it was the 5th year of primary school in Italy, and the teacher that was in charge of us for the first 4 years got sick, and so we got a substitute teacher for a year. And this substitute teacher was a anti-system rebel. She was very young, and, you know, she would be frowned upon by many people now because she was actually openly supporting some of the terrorist groups that were doing terrorist stuff in Italy at the time. And I'm not saying that those were groups that were supposed to be supported, but she kind of made me think, even as early as that. For some reason, we ended up in political discussions, and she was trying to say, well, not everything that you read on the news is the way that it is. These groups are actually trying to take down the democratical Christians who are supported by the mafia and by the Americans, and so they're being demonized by the media, but they're actually kind of the good guys that are trying to wake people up to this hegemony that has been in place since the end of World War II. Somehow, at 9 years old, I understood this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how I ended up in this kind of debate, but I did, and I got it. And so, and in fact, I remember that my stepfather at the time got extremely angry because he was like, this is not subject matter that should be discussed with a child. And he actually went and banged on the door of the substitute teacher, and they had a big grand old fight. Because I had been exposed to ideas that I was not supposed to be exposed to. So basically what I'm saying is my matrix got shattered really early, and at the end of that school year, one of the things that my parents decided to do, because obviously I was in their mind going down a path that was not quite right. So they stuck me in for 3 years in a school with the nuns, right? The Catholic nuns, who were, I hated that place. It was horrible. And so in some ways I was exposed again in that place about a lot of the hypocrisy of certain kinds of religion and religious institutions. And by the time I was 12, I had organized a whole school strike with other 2 girls, and we made the school grind to a standstill for 3 months until eventually they had enough, and they basically called everybody's parents for some huge meeting, right? And my nickname at the time was Robespierre. That's what they called me, right? He was the leader of the French.
Looks like we've got ourselves a troublemaker.
That's right. But I was not really a troublemaker. I was just very vocal, right? And I didn't like injustice. And that was just a situation that, for various reasons, I was seeing stuff that I was not okay with, and I was pointing it out. And because I had very high grades, I had kind of like an A+ average in every subject, they couldn't really get rid of me, right? So, and I think that kind of made me feel that I could say whatever I wanted, right? Kind of smart ass, right?
Imagine somebody with power who can say what they like. Very good. Yep. So anyway, so you went around swinging the sword of truth hither and thither.
So things, basically coming to the end.
We got to come to the end. Okay.
Yeah, I think that some of us just have it in us. I think that is why we're here. We have the truth gene. We have it, and part of our job is to come here and look at stuff that doesn't work and change it. And if we follow that vocation, if you like, that is the purpose of our soul embodiment, we also get a lot of help from the higher realms. That's been my experience, that then Source and the higher realms really kick in and help us in many different ways, right? So that's the end of my speech.
JayPee Gallanti, my sweet soul sister. It's been a fantastic show today. I've had, I was going to have this big old guy, and he didn't turn up. So I've been blessed with my sweetest. I had Sam Muggsy and Dr. Sam Muggsy and Dr. JayPee Gallanti, and just had the best conversations ever. So thank you very much. Welcome back, and we'll be joined by Frank Jordan any second after this. Hang on, where's my outro? There it is. Okay, good night, everybody. Meow. beyond.